Hello and welcome to Form 1040. This is the U.S. Individual Income Tax Return. It's the long form. We are going to do just a quick overview of this form today because you've already had practice filling out forms very similar when you filled out the 1040EZ and the 1040A. So we're going to go through just the big sections and I'll point out some key areas for you. Okay, our first big section is your personal information. Again, very similar to your other forms. Always make sure to include your Social Security number and your spouse's if you're married, and then check if you would like $3 to go to the presidential election campaign, or leave it blank if you do not. Then we have filing status. Your filing status, remember, again, is are you single, are you married filing joint, or married filing separate, head of household, meaning maybe you are single but you have a dependent like a child, or a qualifying widower. So you would want to make sure to check one of those. And then you have your exemptions. You will always claim an exemption for yourself, and then if you're married, one for your spouse. Then very important, you have your dependents. So if you do have any children, you must list your children here along with their Social Security number. Remember that the IRS will not accept your dependent unless they have a Social Security number. And then check this box if they're under age 17 because you may be able to qualify for the additional child tax credit. Okay, scrolling down on page 1 still, now we have our income. Notice it says attached form here. Also any other types of income forms, W-2G or 1099-R, if you had tax withheld. That won't be necessary if you file this return online. And if you go to irs.gov, they have a site where you can e-file your information. Okay, our first income, the one that most people have, would be the wages, salaries, and tips. And that's going to be from your W-2. Now some people will also have taxable interest. And then notice it says attach Schedule B if required. Well, it's only required if you have over $1,500 of taxable interest. So many people don't need to attach that schedule. You can always attach Schedule B, but it's not necessarily required. And then if you'll notice as we head down this income list, there are tax-exempt interest, dividends, qualified dividends. Those are things that you will see on a Form 1099 that you will receive from whatever company you are investing your money into. Now under line 10, you have something called taxable refunds, credits, or offsets of state and local income taxes. So if you received a refund last year for state taxes, this is where this would go, because in this year, it would be your income. All right, heading down, you can read through the different descriptions, and most of them are fairly self-explanatory. We've already talked about your business income or loss. And then if you come down here, there's an unemployment compensation, so if you're laid off. And if you don't know where it goes, there's always an other income box. Adding up all your income onto line 22 here, you would get your total income. That's not your adjusted gross income, it's just your total income. In order to get to your adjusted gross income, you have things in here that are adjustments. So you would definitely want to read through this section to see if you're a teacher or an educator, you can get up to $250 of education expenses as an adjustment to your income, meaning that you can deduct it from your income. There's some other things in here as well, moving expenses, and remember we talked about deductible part of self-employment tax right here, line 27. So if you do have your own business and you pay self-employment tax, remember that half of that comes back as an adjustment to your total income. If you take out a student loan, you can actually offset some of your income with the interest that you pay on that student loan as well. Okay, once you've added up all of your adjustments, then you'll subtract those from your taxable income. Here on line 37, that is your AGI, or adjusted gross income. Remember, that's a very important figure because you use that figure to calculate other types of credits or deductions. On line 37, your AGI is also what is on line 38. Line 38 is just carried over from line 37. So often on your forms, like your Schedule A, it'll say amount from line 38. And again, that's still just your AGI. Then we come down to our itemized deductions, which you know from Schedule A, you can use those if those are greater than your standard deduction, which are listed out here. So you'll always want to compare what you get for your itemized deductions with the standard deduction, and you'll want to take the greater amount. But remember that if you don't own any property, your itemized deductions most likely will not be greater than your standard deduction. And then here on line 42 are your exemptions. So that's the number of boxes you checked on page 1 for yourself, your spouse, and your children. Once you subtract your itemized or standard deduction and your exemptions from your adjusted gross income, you get your box for your taxable income here. And then you'll go to your tax tables in order to determine what you would owe on your taxable income. Okay, moving right along, we come down to some credits. So if you look down here, we have a lot of credits, different credits that you can take. Many people don't take advantage of these credits because they don't have them. But some of the credits that you may be taking that we've looked at before would be credit for child and dependent care expenses. So you might have daycare expenses. Make sure that you look at Form 2441 along with the instructions if you have that. There's education credits, a child tax credit. Those are probably your big credits that many Americans end up taking. And then finally we come down to other taxes here. Sometimes you end up having to pay additional taxes other than just your federal income tax. Like for example, your self-employment tax. If you have your own business, remember that you pay Medicare and Social Security, your portion plus the employer's portion, so you pay double. All right, finally we come down to payments. We would want to make sure that we pick up our federal income tax withheld from our W-2s here on this line, 62. Many people do not make estimated tax payments because those payments are withheld from their W-2s or shown on their W-2s and withheld evenly throughout the year. Usually people who have their own businesses that make a fair amount of money will end up paying estimated taxes. And then very important here, we have the earned income credit. So always check to see that your income might qualify you for the earned income credit. This is a credit that a lot of people can take but don't take advantage of. If you don't want to calculate your earned income credit, remember that you can write EIC out here in the margin and the IRS will calculate it for you. All right, finally you have the additional tax credit, child tax credit, and that is really the end of the credits that most people tend to take. So when you add those up, you get your total credits and your total payments, which you'll subtract from your tax in order to determine if you owe or if you'll get a refund. And that's where these final lines come into play. On 73, this will be filled out if you overpaid, and on line 76, this will be filled out if you owe. And that concludes our lesson, our quick overview on Form 1040. Remember that you still need to go to the individual forms to fill out specific things like Schedule A or Schedule C if you have your own business, or the forms for child tax credit, for example.